ठीक थे, बिल्कुल ठीक थे सारे।
Okay, great. So let me share my screen and please confirm if you can see the slides. Okay, so I hope you can see the slides.
यस सर।
Okay, that's great. So before starting with the talk, first of all, thanks, Dr. Satya, thanks SID Lab, and also thank you for giving us this wonderful virtual tour. This is the first time I got to know that so many wonderful things are being done in your lab. Before we talk the start, just two quick announcement. We might have some electricity disruption, so let us not panic with that. I think now we are used to. So just in case it happens and we have an internet disconnection, we can just, wait for the organizers to resume the meeting, and we will then continue with the talk. And second thing, I'm giving this talk from home, so there might be a baby crying behind me. Again, there is no need to panic. So about me, I'm Hazrat Ali. I'm currently lecturer in the University of Stirling. I'm a senior member of the IEEE. I'm an associate fellow of the Advanced Higher Education. I also serve as associate editor with a few journals. I have been book editor for this wonderful book on generative models for medical AI. I also currently am serving as a area chair for the IEEE International Joint Conference on Neural Networks, and also serve on PEACE-C, a program committee of multiple conferences. Just to help you whether this talk is for you or not. So today, if you want to hear about some fancy gain architecture or transformer architecture, then this is not something that we are going to cover today. But if you want to develop a general understanding of how AI is going to impact us, or how my actions as an AI engineer or researcher are going to impact the world around me, then definitely this talk is for us. And a bit of a disclaimer that when we talk about the impact of AI, then definitely we cannot exclude the ethics that surround AI and in general AI technology. And ethics is a very huge subject, so we cannot say that we can cover it in just one single talk. And also we cannot assume that we know all the answers around the ethics of AI. And one main reason is that there might be differences in how we define ethics, or how different people define ethics. Again, these AI ethics might be overlapping with some of the concepts from technology ethics. When we say we cannot be, we might not agree on the definition of ethics. So this is a nice example here to explain this concept. So this is kind of a joke that there were two young fish swimming along, and they happened to meet an older fish, and the older fish asked him, let me move this. The older fish asked him, "Good morning, boys. How is the water?" And one of the two young fish replied after a while, "What is water? What the hell is water?" So we can apply the same, analogy to AI ethics. Many times when we talk about AI ethics in group discussions, there is a huge possibility that we do not, or different people do not agree on the definition. Uh, you might have heard of this, trolley problem. So imagine you are in this position. You are the guy who can control the track, and you can divert the trolley. If you do not divert the trolley, it is going to kill 5 people. If you do divert the trolley, it's going to kill one person. In this case, what you are going to do? If you pull the lever, you might divert the trolley direction and end up killing one person, but also end up saving 5 people. So, are you going to pull the lever, divert the trolley, or you just stand by, do nothing? So now, and I actually asked this in my class as well, and the response is actually, it's not unsurprising. The response is different in different cultures. So, for example, you pull the lever with the intention to save the 5 people, but ended up killing 1 people. So you might be sued because this person died as a result of your action. If you had not pulled the lever, this person would not have died. And because you are just an operator and not the decision maker, it's not your job to decide whether to pull the lever or not, but rather as an operator, you just follow the instructions. So this is this nice demo. You can try this in your free time. It basically gives you multiple scenarios around this trolley problem, but I got some screenshots for you. So for example, here, in the second screenshot, so it says it has already killed few people behind, and now you are in a position, if you divert the direction by pulling the lever, you can actually save the next group of 5 people. Are you going to pull the lever or not? And then this is in the fourth screenshot, you have got, uh, like kind of, yeah, I'm not sure with what this shows, but here in the last one, you can be in like different positions. For example, what will be your action as the driver of the trolley, and what will be your action as the operator of the lever, and of course, what will be your action if you are one of these 5 people, or if you are, the person on the second track. So now I think it's easy to understand that all these people, if their role change, as a consequence, their priority also change. So like I said, I gave the example of what is water. So what is ethical here? Maybe we do not, or different people might not agree on what is ethical here. So ethics is not feeling, because the way I feel like it does not, it is ethical. Ethics is not defined by laws, because laws can vary in different countries, in different geographical regions, in different cultures. And ethics is also not equal to societal belief. Again, societal belief vary from region to region. And when technology change, so with the change in the technology, the definition of ethics also change. For example, now we have this vaccination, COVID vaccination. So some people would claim that we deserve the vaccination before other countries because our scientists designed the vaccination, developed the vaccination. So now the definition of ethics is changing with, again, with the birth control, with the surrogate pregnancy. So in different cultures, it is treated in a different way. So we cannot exclude these concepts from AI. When we develop AI, or we support the developing of AI, it's very important to know how it is going to impact different people in different societies. But AI can go, with our intention or without our intention, it might behave occasionally, in a different way. For example, in this example, what we are trying to show is that this is a recommender system of Amazon. Someone developed it, and now what is doing is recommending alternative, recommending additional objects to the buyer, to the client. So we can easily see the mismatch here in the recommendation that it is making. And in my personal experience, so I once purchased a camera from Amazon. So and it was, recommending more cameras to me, and it does not make sense, because if I have already purchased a camera, I won't like to purchase another camera. I might be looking for a camera cover, or I might be looking for a memory card. So it's not that I will be, the next day I won't wake up and order another camera. So we know that AI can, go wrong. And even that we know that AI cannot be perfect, there are still cases that people are now using it in scenarios where the stakes can be very high. For example, there was a lot of discussion around it, that the police is using AI to process the data, to predict the crime rate in certain areas, in certain localities, and completely ignoring the bias that is present in the data used to train the AI model. Again, there was this app which got quite popular in the UK, known as Babylon, but it ended up failing even basic heart attacks. So it got a lot of funding, it got a lot of funding from the government, a lot of contracts, but eventually it was rolled back. I guess it still exists in the US. And then there was this scenario where the New York police used these robo dogs in actual crime scenes, so not like for simulation purpose, not for like for assessment purpose, but rather in an actual crime investigation scene where they were trying to get some criminal, supposed criminal. They actually used this robo dog. So how this action is going to impact the civilians, how this action is going to impact the public is something that we cannot, exclude from our consideration of use of AI. And then, so this is something from 2007, not very recent actually. We saw that robot snipers were, used to kind of auto kill civilians. So, and just as we are talking now, just 2 weeks back, OpenAI got this defense contract with the US military to help them in the US military projects, and it's basically a major shift from their policy where they were very clear that OpenAI tools such as ChatGPT will not be allowed to use in scenarios where it can harm yourself or it can be used to harm other people. But now it is a completely different priority which they have. So we know that these AI tools can have a lot of bias in their decision making. So one wonderful example that I usually give is this facial recognition tool, which people actually did a lot of assessment of this, a lot of case studies of it. And if you get time, I really encourage you to watch this TED talk by Joy. So basically, what happened? She went to some kind of workshop in Germany. I guess she was a PhD student at that time in the MIT lab. So they were using for access control. They were using this face recognition tool, and the tool or the software completely failed to recognize her face. And she tried multiple times, and it continued to fail. And the team over there, like the operators or the software engineers, were completely clueless. They had no idea how to explain it. But now we know that because of the bias in the data, because of the data that has been used to train the model, the way it behaves, the way it makes decision can be significantly different. And then just before this Chat GPT and GPT 3.5, we had the GPT 3. There was some assessment study by one of the guy from Stanford. So you know that Chat GPT or GPT 3 is basically a generative model where it can generate next sequence of words. So when they tried to give it a starter word, for example, two Muslims walk into, so it will generate sentences that will be somehow uh, related to activities that can be categorized under the act of terrorism or under the act of harming other people. So for example, it would complete the statement: two Muslims walk into a synagogue with axes and a bomb. Or it would say into a Texas cartoon contest and opened fire. Or it would say into a gay bar in Seattle and started shooting at will, killing 5 people. And in the second example, they give this example that audacious is to boldness as Muslim is to. And again, they saw that 1/4 of the time GPT-3 would return the word terrorist to complete the analogy. And they actually tried many different possible starter sentences. He also tried with words which were starting with Jewish names, and then they compared the responses with the starter words that would start with Muslims name, and there was a lot of mismatch in how this model completed the sentences. So definitely this is a study that one should definitely read and go through. So what they saw that for Muslims, if the input sentence would involve a Muslim, mentioning of a Muslim name or general Muslim general, so more than 60% of the time, the sentence will be completed with some kind of violent words or violent actions. In comparison to that, if you start the input sentence with some kind of Jewish word or Jewish name or mentioning a Jewish person, the the percentage that it would relate somehow end up using violent words is much less than 10%. So the way it is generating uh, responses for different people with different religious beliefs is totally different. Anyhow, so changing the gears a bit, another notion around the impact of AI is in the job industry and the notion that AI could be replacing human labor. So today we know that we got autonomous taxis, we got this wonderful chat gpt or other llm tools that can create contents, that can complete contents, that can summarize contents in a way that is very much similar to how human beings write or complete sentences. And now we can see the applications of AI in restaurants where we see robots at serving people. And then now, maybe you already saw this news from Google CEO who says that 25% of the code in Google is now written by AI. So eventually it could, increase, and how it's going to impact software engineers or coders is definitely something to think about. So one study part in particular shows that the sector that is going to be impacted the most is perhaps the banking sector in terms of the automation, in terms of the replacement of jobs. So it shows like around 54% of the employment could be redundant in the banking sector with AI. And I will show you a demo from Google, which basically performs some kind of simulation to show how they use these tools to make decision around loan applications and credit applications. Another notion around this AI is how AI is going to control us. So one aspect is that we use AI or how people use AI. Of course, that is important. But then another aspect is AI going to control us either directly or indirectly? So, for example, in the warehouse, is a robot going to supervise human being? Is a robot going to assign shifts to the workers or approve or disapprove the request for a leave? Perhaps in many industries is already happening. So there is this concept of alignment, and we, so alignment refers to the fact that when you create something, you want it to be in your control. You do not want it to go out of your control. So the guiding principle here is that when we develop AI systems, we want them to be aligned with our goals and our values. We do not want to be misaligned. Okay, so all these concepts actually then can be summarized to the concept of bias in training machine learning models, or eventually the bias in the data that is used to train machine learning models. And the bias in the data could be a historical bias because this is how the data is recorded. We cannot change it. So the data was recorded in the past and we cannot change it. So one example I give is, for example, when people were using different AI models to detect COVID, they were using X-ray images of lungs, CT images of lungs, without realizing that the data they were using was actually for pneumonia patients, because this is how it was available for free on Kaggle. So many computer science researchers just went to Kaggle, downloaded the data, and tried to use it to detect COVID-19, and the model would actually detect COVID-19, and they would claim it is going to detect COVID-19 with 80% accuracy, 85% accuracy. without realizing that the data they were using was actually for pneumonia patients. And we know that pneumonia is something that can happen in babies, in children, and less likely in adults. While on the other hand, COVID is something that would occur in adults and less frequent in children. Then we have bias related to representation, how different population is represented in the data. So consider white versus black population, consider male versus female population. And then we have this measurement bias, and then we have evaluation bias, whether we are using the right metrics to evaluate it. For example, so if your teacher gives you a multiple choice question, your exam, and you randomly choose option A for all the questions, and just by coincidence, the teacher had designed the MCQs paper such that 80% of the questions were having option A is the correct option. So if you just randomly choose all of the A options, so without even knowing the correct answer, you will end up getting 80% score. So accuracy is something, if you have a data with 90% of the samples that belong to one class and then 10% of the samples that belong to other class, and you just predict everything as the first class, you still get 90% accuracy. So here the accuracy measurement, the accuracy metric is not the correct metric to use. So, and then aggregation bias, which is basically a combination of the previous biases. So there is this nice study that basically elaborate all these different types of biases, how they occur, and how one can, address their reasons. So I already gave an example of the COVID-19. So we had a study that appeared in CVPR workshop. So we actually got to study almost more than 40 research papers, and we saw that this kind of bias actually is very frequent in all those studies where they are trying to generate data for COVID-19 without realizing that they are actually inputting a lot of bias as well. So I won't go into this here. I will just skip this. Okay. So another notion around the use of AI is the concept of interpretability and explainability. So we want the AI models to be explainable, that the decision they make can be explained to somebody or can be interpreted by human beings. But we know that when we develop AI models, and these days a lot of AI models are actually neural networks and deep learning, and we know that deep learning models are known for not being very interpretable or being, like these behaving in a way of like black box models where we are unable to explain them. On the other hand, decision trees can be explained in much better way, but you are now, caught up in a trade-off. So, for example, for the first scenario, you are using a decision tree. You do understand it, you can explain it, but it doesn't work well. And for the second scenario, you end up using a neural network. It works very well, but you don't understand it. So which option you use as a machine learning engineer, as an AI engineer, is of course something that we need to consider. And again, it depends on the kind of application we are going to develop. Another notion around AI and machine learning is the concept of fairness. Is the model that I'm going to develop is fair enough? Is the data fair enough? Is the decision it is making is fair enough? How it is going to impact different communities? So one specific example that I want to give here is the tool known as Compass. So it was kind of a tool that could actually predict the crime and the repetition of crime by a certain individual. Uh, so there was a company known as NotPoint that developed this tool, and they actually gave it to the crime enforcement agencies. So what happened? There is a popular company known as ProPublica. They actually did a wonderful assessment of this tool. So one of the key observation of this assessment was that they actually did assessment of the risk score and they saw that the risk score is almost uniformly distributed when they evaluated it for people with black color, but the risk scores for people with white color were actually had much higher accumulation in the lower risk region. So, for example, if we see at the bar chart on the right hand side, we see that very few people are actually getting a high risk score, and much higher number of people have been assigned a lower risk score. But on the other hand, for black people, we see that much higher risk scores is associated with a lot of people. And this is what the tool was doing. So now they actually this assessment, this analysis, that if the model would label a white person as a high risk individual, but the person will not recommit a crime, the percentage was 23%. But the same model would label a black person as a high risk person, and the black person did not recommit a crime, the rate here was almost 44%, 45%. On the other hand, the model would label a white person as a low risk individual. The model would predict that this person is not going to commit a crime again, yet the person committed a crime, so the rate here was 47%. On the other hand, for black people it was much lower. So the idea of false positive and true positive in machine learning. So we see that the false negative for white people were much higher, and the false positive for black people were much higher. So there is a lot of discussion around it. So how this decision is going to impact, and this tool was basically used by the judge to make an assessment of whether the individual is going to grant a bail or refuse a bail, whether this individual is going to commit a crime or not in the future. So the decision of the judge to give a bail is driven by this assessment, whether the person is going to be a risk for the society or the person is really committed to not repeat the crime again. So and then there is, I want to show you a demo around the banking sector. So I will skip the slideshow and want to move to the browser to show you this demo. So this is a simulation scenario, but in the West, when the bank or the finance institute decides to approve the loan application or reject a loan application, they do it on something known as the basis of something known as credit score associated to each and every individual. Ideally, what do we want? We want to have a clear boundary between people with lower credit score and people with higher credit score. Hmm. So people in the light blue colors are those people that might end up default and they will not return the loan to the bank. While people will with the dark blue color, it represent basically the people, the individuals that are going to return the loan on time. What we want to have is to have a clear boundary between these two different groups of people, but practically it does not happen. We have a kind of overlapping. So we cannot use a single criteria, the credit score, to basically separate these two groups. But this is what actually is happening. They use this credit score to basically make a decision on the application of loan for individuals. But then the finance sector or the banks, they also want to make profit. So they cannot refuse all the applications for the loan, because this is how if they give loan, this is how they will make profit. If they do not give loan to people, they cannot make profit at all. So on one hand, they want to increase the profit. On the other hand, they also want to reduce the number of loans to people who are not going to pay back. So we have two different population, and the idea here is that we cannot actually use the same threshold for the two population. So for example, if we move the threshold, we can clearly see that the total profit here for the bank is increasing. So for the first population, the blue one, we might be using a much higher threshold. Okay. But for the second population, we might not be able to use the same threshold. Okay. Because if, for example, if I choose the threshold 62 here, I'm actually ending as a banking institute, I'm ending up with a much lower profit. So the idea here is basically that we cannot treat the two population in the same way. So all the tools that we are designing as an AI engineer, or they're considering this fact, or is this kind of uh, are these kind of factors incorporated in the tools? Yeah, this is something that we need to be aware of when we try to make these tools or when we use these tools. Another concept around uh, fairness is the notion of equality and equity. So the equality is something that you want to give equal resources to everybody, and you assume that they will equally benefit from it. But this is not the case actually. So what you do is you do equity. So you end up, giving support to you end up giving different support to different people, so that their benefit, at the end is the same. But then there is a notion of justice, that instead of giving resources, just address the root cause, remove the barrier, for example, here, so that everybody can have equal opportunity to benefit from the resources. So are we incorporating the concept of justice in AI tools or not? This is something that we always need to think about. So I want to again move to the browser to show you this example of representation, how different people are represented in AI tools, and whether they are going to have impact on different people or not. So here is basically a dispensing machine for hand wash. So let us see how it behaves for people of different color. So this is perhaps self-explanatory. So we see the response of the dispensing machine for different color of skin. And then someone posted this another example here. Let me play that as well. So this, I think, Snapchat filter, and how it responds for faces of different colors. So you can see. Let me start from the beginning. So you see the filter, the Snapchat filter automatically applied here, but then it fails for people with black color, and then again with someone with white color, again it works. Okay, so let me move back to the slides. Okay, so the idea here is, I think this is blue. So the idea here is that when we, in a similar way, when we try to develop AI tools, it's super important to know how it's going to impact different people, and we need to ensure the representation of different people. So again, this is another example from Amazon. So Amazon basically use kind of AI tools to generate the listing of different items that they sell on their website. And here for the toy in black color, the AI actually generated words that are not something that Amazon would like to have on their website. And also the users might not wish to have such kind of description for the toys. So the concept of representation, when we talk about representation, we might wish to have like equal representation, or bring back the concept of equality, equity, and justice. We want to have like a representation for everyone that could be under the category of justice. So here is another example from Timnit. She is a very popular advocate for equality and equity in AI. So she shared this experience of her where she attended a popular AI conference, and she said that out of the more than 5,000 people, only 5 or 6 people were black. And also, she is a very popular author. You might remember her story where she was fired by Google for one of the paper. Basically, she was working in Google and she wrote a paper where she highlighted, the costs, the different costs associated with large language models. But eventually, the team refused to allow her to publish the paper, and she ended up parting ways with Google's. Another example is in the Google search here, or so if you search the term CEO a few years back, you would see all male white people. Now it's a bit different, but still you see that it's dominated by a certain color. But I give you an exercise. Just try the word terrorist on Google Images and see what you see. And you try it on Bing search for images and see what you see. So you can clearly see the disparity here. So coming back to the concept of what is water, so what is ethical? Something that could be ethical for one person might not be ethical for other. Something that could be ethical for a company that has priority of making profit might not be ethical for the users or the general audience. So the idea is we cannot decide whether, for example, in large language model, so I give you an example of this Amazon description of the toys. So if I want to remove all the hateful words from the training data of the large language model, am I going to help the AI model? Perhaps not, because we cannot remove all the hateful words from the training data. If we do it, our model is never going to learn about all those things. So the key question is, who is going to decide what should be included or excluded? Another case study I want to show here is the study of the case of the Clearview Eye, who designed this tool that can actually scrape the web data, and any picture you give it, it will scrape the internet and it will dig out all the pictures, all the videos of that person that are available on the internet without the person even knowing. So now, previously, you know, the concept of being public was very different. Something that you want to share with everyone with your consent. But now anything. So if you are in the street, perhaps you are in public place. But now, if you are on the internet, if you are on any website, if you are on any social media platform, so you are in a public space. And then there is a question whether you can claim your privacy or not. So practically, no, do not expect any privacy if you are in a social media platform. But different countries might have different laws around it, but still, there are companies, there are tools that are using your data. Is it ethical for me to work on this data? Again, the priorities might be different from different individuals and different companies. So I want to, wrap up this talk with these wonderful suggestions from Rachel. So she says that when you develop such tools, always perform the ethical risk sweeping, just like the cybersecurity penetration testing. So analyze or assess the tool from all aspects of ethics. And you know whom interest always be need to make sure whom interest we are going to serve. What will be the experiences of the different people, the users, and the people who are enforcing the use. And then always think about the bad players in the society, the terrible people who are going to misuse it, who are going to weaponize it. So, or am I going to serve the society, or I'm going to damage it? And it's not it's a never ending loop. Continue the assessment, do not close the loop, continue the assessment. So with this, I want to open the floor for questions, and a lot of acknowledgement for this wonderful lecture from Sergey. He has this wonderful course on full stack deep learning, and there are wonderful resources from Rachel as well on fast AI. There is this wonderful book, Fairness and Machine Learning, which you might want to study to understand the concepts around fairness in AI. Yeah. So I'm open for questions now. Hello.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Yeah, walaikum assalam.
Sir, in one of your slides, you mentioned that decision trees, the baseline models are interpretable, while deep neural network models are not interpretable or something similar. So, if I'm a machine learning engineer and I don't know the background or the working principle of deep neural network, so how would I calibrate it or would fine tune it for my custom use?
No, so the concept here that we are trying to explain is the explainability and interpretability of the model. Why it is making a decision the way it is making. Hmm? Why it is for example, if we want to highlight the tumor region in brain MRI, why it is deciding that this particular pixel of the brain MRI is a tumor and other pixels are not. What key factors? So in decision tree is relatively simple. So for example, if you are building a model, the decision tree can actually give you a nice visual for the split that it has based on the different features. So you can explain it to a user that the reason it suggested me they do not approve the loan application is because the person has clearly previous high debts where it made the decisions, or the person is having a terrible family situation and he might end up getting kicked out of the house and he won't be able to pay the debt. In neural networks, perhaps you won't be able to see this relationship so clearly. There are other tools, for example shape, other techniques where you do get some kind of partial explainability, but eventually, like most people agree that these deep learning models are uh, most of the time they are like working as a black box. So imagine all these chat gpt things, large language models. So even experts most of the time are unable to give you an explanation of why it is behaving the way it is behaving. You might get partial explanation, you might get partial answers, but uh, they might not hold true all the time. So regarding the second part of your question around fine tuning, so you do not need to be able to explain the model to fine tune it. You can still fine tune it without even being able to explain it. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Hazrat. Thank you so much for
Walaikum
the
assalam.
wonderful presentation.
Hazrat, you talked about the biases in the models, in the generative AI models. So, if we keep aside the models and the data we look at that is available on uh, the internet, regarding the Muslims being termed as terrorists and the data regarding the black people, so internet has always been biased if we talk about that data. So is it the model that is to be blamed for giving such results, or is it the data that has always been there and the models are trained on that data? So, like, how can you segregate it? Like, is it the model to be blamed for giving such results, or is it the data that has always been there and the model is trained on the same data?
So who is this, please?
I'm Dr. Yasir from DCSE.
Okay, so there's a wonderful question, and as you actually made it easy for me to address this by mentioning that internet has always been biased, and I'm glad that you admit this. Most people don't agree on this, but uh, we know that who is controlling these models, who are designing these models. So I was once in a workshop, and there is a wonderful presenter from Stanford University. So he actually showed us a study on predicting the way a post on a Facebook will, be the number of likes, the number of reposting, the number of resharing it will get, and how viral the post is going to be. And then the next phase of the study was that if we can predict that this post is going to be viral, can we also generate this sequence to make the post viral? Because now we know that what are the factors that ended up making this post viral. If we know those factors, we can induce those factors in new post to make them viral. So one of the key question from the audience was that how did you get this data? So he smiled and he said, we have internal uh, contract or connection with Facebook because this is private data. So we know that who has this data and who are the companies that are developing these models, they have control over this data. So we cannot completely remove the bias from the data if there is bias in the data. But we can at least do want to make sure that everyone is equally represented, and for example, every population is equally represented, and every community is equally represented. And if so, in machine learning, we know that if we train the model with the biased data, the model will end up being biased. So at least we need to ensure to make measures to address the bias in the data to the best of our abilities. So now today we know how these AI algorithms decide to censor certain posts and allow other posts. And it does not happen. It does not occur without the designer or the AI engineer designing systems. So I agree that the internet in general is a biased place, and it's super important to for this today's session. The take-home message is like to develop an understanding of how our actions are going to have impact on different societies. You might remember this YOLO tool, which now has this version 10 or version 11. It is a computer vision algorithm to detect objects in a video or in images. The person, I forgot the name, who developed the first version of this actually ended up, you know, completely resigning from the field of computer vision by realizing how, you know, by realizing the certain stakes associated with the tools. How this is, and now we see that different governments are using such kind of detection tools to detect certain individuals. You might wish to find out about Palantir company, but that is a topic from some for some other day. In your free time, you can Google it. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hazrat. Very nice presentation. I'm Dr. Muniba. I don't have any questions as you have covered all the AI ethics, but I have a suggestion that in your next talk, I'm expecting that you must also talk about AI ethics in medical data, as you also have experience about it, as we face a very strict AI ethics review related to medical data, starting from taking the consent from patient and then going through different stages, like whether this data is biased towards a specific population, like as you already told that we have the biased data towards white people. Maybe in the medical data too, we can face such problems that if we have the data sets related to a specific population, then how we are going to deal these situations and what will happen if we commercialize these products, whether we have to specifically tell that this product is not for the general population and this is only for this specific people and not for this, and how we are going to deal with the data transparency, whether it be going to benefit us and how we will be going to deal all this situation. But I think this medical data is quite, it goes to very strict AI ethics, and how we will deal this
Okay,
with.
so in medical field or medical imaging field, I think the situation is relatively easier because we are most of the time we are dealing with controlled data. So the medical image data or in general healthcare data that has been made publicly available comes out from very established labs or very established hospitals. And most of the time they actually ensure that the data is released after being properly anonymized, after being following all the guidelines that their internal IRB has approved, and the review committee for ethics. So most of the time the data comes from controlled environment, and if we are using like this public data, we are less concerned about the ethics side because we know that the most of the things have already been addressed for us. In terms of the representation, again, there is a high disparity. What I mean here is that if we look at to the brain tumor data, for example, Brett's data is quite popular. If we look at the skin cancer data, so most of the data sets that are available publicly, they are coming from the West, where the infrastructure of the hospitals is much more digitized, where the data storage is much more organized and digitized, unlike our part of the world, where we don't have a digitized system of storing data. We still, print those X-rays and take it to the doctor to see it, and then after a while we just throw it into the bin. So here I don't see any X-ray being printed. Everything is on the screen of the computer and in the internal storage system of the hospital. So now imagine if we are developing a skin cancer detection tool for our own country, Pakistan, or for someone in the Africa, but all the data that we have used in training the model is coming from the West, people with white skin. So the first thing in skin cancer detection is to take an image of the patch of that part of the body. Is the model going to perform the same way? Is it even like able to detect the skin? So most of the time the decision involves a lot of criteria around the texture and the color that varies for the normal skin and the patch of the skin which has cancer. So that is something that definitely, and we as a computer scientist, we are not developing the data. We depend on our collaborators, we depend on hospitals, we depend on doctors, and let us hope that one day we get access to their data as well.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Hazrat Ali, there are some online questions in the chat as well. Would you like to respond to them?
Okay, sure. I see one question here from Mr.
Sure.
Muhammad Amin
Short
Nadeem.
responses.
How can we ensure fairness in education if professors are permitted to use AI for content creation while students are restricted from using AI in their learning or assignments? Need your suggestion. So this is a general question, not related to perhaps, but AI is not banned. I don't know which university you are mentioning, but in our university and across the UK, it's not banned. The use of the only thing is that you need to declare it. So imagine using a calculator. Imagine using the Grammarly tool for rephrasing. Imagine using any other rephrasing tools. The only thing they expect from you is you to declare it. Even with publishers like Elsevier or Springer, you need to declare it, and then you also need to declare the level of the use. So in our institute, we have 5 levels, which starts from no AI at all to number 5, which is like everything has been written by AI. So as an instructor, when I design an assignment and examination, I ask the students, and I am required to declare this. I have to ask the students to declare the level of the AI which they have used, and I have to define in advance whether I want to allow the AI only for brainstorming, or the AI only for rephrasing, or the AI for writing the entire essay. So it's not completely banned. The only thing is around the regulation, which basically says that you need to declare.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite our esteemed chairman, Dr. Laik Hassan, to deliver the concluding remarks and share his valuable insights.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Dr. Hazrat Ali, for such an insightful presentation and then the following discussion. So, we heard of actually many unanswered questions. So, for me, this discussion is more philosophical and less technical, because when we talk about biases and inequities, inequalities, so they not only exist on the internet, but also outside, everywhere in our society, in other societies, locally, on a larger scale, global scale. So, anyway, we can continue with this discussion. And as Dr. Hazrat also in the beginning said that this is not everything about AI ethics, there is more to it. Like these are questions and concerns, but for example, if I talk about my perspective, so I have even bigger questions and concerns than this. Because if you think about our daily lives, so everything is dependent on data, right? Our healthcare, education, economy, the banking, each and everything, right? And this amount of data is increasing at an exponential rate, or maybe even bigger than exponential rate. So think about handling and managing such huge data. Behind there is a huge infrastructure also, and that infrastructure draws huge amount of energy, and that energy contributes big time to climate change, right? So that is a huge concern of mine and of others also. And this is what is happening already. And another personal concern, which is perhaps not happening or has not happened, but it can happen. You can say it's a theoretical Hawaii, but like I mean, everything is dependent on data and it's becoming more and more dependent on data. So what if like there is a major disruption, something like nobody can understand and resolve? So what then? So thank you again, everyone, for participating, and Dr. Hazrat Ali for engaging us all. And I hope we will continue with such insightful sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for participating in this event. Also, thank you to the online participants. I could see in the chat. Okay, was this AI generated or real? So some of the audience were, I think, presumably from Italy, from China, as they said in the chat. Some of our faculty members were here, some were online, like Dr. Nasir Ahmed and others. So thanks to all of you for participating, and I hope that we can not just stop here, but the questions that we just raised, we can move on and take one step further into answering those questions and have another seminar with the same topic, but in an advanced manner, inshallah. Thank you very much, and Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.